What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Puzzle Huddle with Experts. I'm very fortunate to have Dr. Vedet Coleman-Robinson. She's a PhD historian. She's a museum professional, heck of a high achiever, and I'm very excited to have her to learn differently. We've had a lot of STEM professionals, and now we want to venture into some other fields and get different cross sections of information. So thank you so much, Dr. Coleman, for coming today. Do you go by Dr. Coleman, Dr. Robinson, or a little bit of both, Dr. Coleman-Robinson?
I'll do whatever you want as long as you're not calling me out my name. So it doesn't matter, whichever one you remember.
All right. Well, if you could set the foundation for all of us, what are your academic achievements and what are you an expert in, and then kind of what do you do professionally?
Sure. So I'm Dr. Vedet Coleman-Robinson, and I am the executive director of the Association of African American Museums. We support all of the African American and African focused museums in the country, as well as internationally. So we're an international organization. As far as academically, I went to Virginia State University for undergrad, and I wound up starting there in the public administration department. Mm-hmm. And you know, when you're there your freshman year, you're like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. And public administration swept me up. I don't know why poli-sci, maybe they just weren't there at the day that I signed in. And while I was there, I was just more enamored by being on the campus of former slaves, and just watching the whole trajectory and the legacy of what it was to be on an HBCU campus. So I wound up switching from public administration to history, and just have been a history major through and through. Graduated from Virginia State University and then went to Howard for my master's, and I was a US history student for the master's with a concentration in public history. And then because I was a glutton for punishment, I went back to Howard, not the Howard part, but you know, just, oh, here she goes with another degree, as my mother would say. Decided to matriculate back into Howard to earn my terminal degree, which was the PhD in US history with a concentration in public history. And my focus was on African Americans in public history.
All right, just so I could hold a little pep rally for the HBCUs. What were some of your favorite memories down there at Virginia State?
Oh, I have so many. I would really say that Virginia State, from the time that I stepped on campus until the time that I graduated, was just like home. It was a place where, you know, for those of you who may have grown up a little bit, you know, getting bullied and things of that nature, I just know when I told my mom that I was going to go to an HBCU, she was deathly afraid. And she said, well, wait a minute, are you sure? You know, like, what's going on? You know, but we had enough family that were graduates of HBCUs, and we had 3 that graduated from Virginia State University. So I think she was just a little bit more apprehensive because she wasn't going to be there to help me out if something went down. But it just wasn't like that. Like, stepped on campus and everybody was there for the same reason. And that was just something that I learned really quickly. And then I also noticed that, you know, we were just being nurtured in a whole different way. Everybody was there to really uplift one another. If you were in class and you weren't getting something, it's not like people were like, oh, haha, sorry you didn't get it.
Yeah.
Too bad, so sad. It was more like, no, we're all here together and we're going to graduate together. And then, you know, I got involved in a whole bunch of things, and then was initiated into Delta Sigma Theta and the Alpha Eta.
Yeah, one time for the Deltas. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so that was probably one of my major accomplishments. But then also, I got a chance to do a lot of work with the president of the university
as an undergrad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because it was
That's
just
awesome.
what I was doing was making sure that for Founders Day and for homecoming, we were doing a lot of work as far as like curating exhibits and things of that nature. So I will always make sure that I would tap into the president to see what he wanted, to see what he didn't want. And all it was a very fun time to be able to curate exhibits. But you don't people are there for homecoming and Founders Day. They're not trying to see the little thing that you put together. So a lot of people walk by, but it was great for
Hold on. You really in the history. Because
yeah.
when homecoming comes up, I'm worried about my outfit. I'm worried about what clubs, what activities, my step show ticket. These kind of things I'm loading up as concerned. And you're working on a history exhibit?
Yeah, I was doing both, so
Okay. There's
it was
room to
like
do
double
both.
duty.
There's
So,
room to do both.
don't get it twisted. Yes, I was doing all of the things, but I just wanted to make sure that what I learned was the exhibits that I was putting together, a lot of the the alumni that were donors
Yeah.
love that. And then also just donors across the board love to see the trajectory and the growth of the school and things of that nature. So I took a lot of pride in it. But then I also took a lot of pride making sure I was going to the gym jams and step shows and making sure that my fit was correct and things of that nature. So yeah, I wasn't like a total dweeb. I mean, I got some stuff to.
Well, two things can be important at the same time. You don't have to go socialize.
It's called multitasking. Yes.
Yeah, and then also have something important to do in terms of curating exhibit.
Yeah.
So you're authentically interested in history. This isn't something that just you tripped over professionally.
No. So unbeknownst to me, growing up, I grew up in a very multicultural school system. My neighborhood was all Black. So we had like an African-American enclave within this bigger township. And I just remember, growing up, we didn't go to the library and see a lot of people who look like us as far as like the books were concerned. So I was always like, well, where are the books for Black people, and our librarian, because she went to our church, was just like, I'll make sure that there are some books here for you guys to read. But then something really spectacular happened. My grandfather and I are super close, and he just one day he was like, I have some things that I want you to know about our family that we passed down through generations, but by the time I want to start cultivating this information and want you to start really getting familiar with it. So one of the things that he did was he introduced me to my mom's godfather who lived in California. And that was my Uncle Paul. And he is a descendant. Well, he just passed away in December, but he's a descendant of Harriet Tubman. So I got to hear like all the stories of his family and, them growing up in Pennsylvania, like why they were in Pennsylvania and things of that nature. But then my grandfather also told me about Vedet Academy, which it's closed now, but it was an African-American junior college in Trenton, South Carolina. And it was a school that was established for African-Americans because, segregation and Jim Crow laws. But the beauty of that is once it closed, we had so many family members who actually matriculated through that school. Also, Mary McLeod Methune was there. She didn't go to the school, but she went on campus to learn a little bit more about establishing a school or what was going on. So that's really cool. And then by the time I was in high school, the whole campus wound up becoming part of the National Register, as well as a museum was started. So I wound up doing a whole bunch of oral histories and things of that nature, just to make sure that our family legacy was preserved. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it because I loved it. And then later I was like, oh, this is a profession. I can make money, so it worked.
Do you remember at all what some of your favorite childhood books were? To have an early interest in history, you may have identified some books, history aligned or fiction that that you just remember from your childhood? Do you remember what any of those?
All of my books that I loved were more focused on biographies. So I love it, and then it had to be like something that I could connect to geographically. So I love learning about Thurgood Marshall because we had family that was in Maryland, and although they weren't in Baltimore, I love the idea of the fact that when we would go to the National Aquarium, maybe I would see him, or maybe I would see his family or something like that. Like I was, like that type of kid. I was still fun. That's the thing. I was a fun kid, but I don't want people to be like, oh my gosh, she wasn't fun at all. I would not have wanted to live around her. But and then like Billie Holiday, anything that I was able to connect to really quickly and read a biography. So those were kind of my things growing up, just being able to really tap into people, learning the lives of people and like what they went through. And the reason why is because, you go through so much turmoil growing up, whatever that internal struggle is.
Yeah.
And it was always like, well, if they went through this, surely I can go through what I'm going through, and can still be great, whatever great is for my life.
Now you mentioned being related to Harriet Tubman. Who might have been some of your favorite historic figures when you were growing up? Like who did you kind of think of as a hero or somebody that was just really fascinating when you were a young person?
Oh, there were so many, but I really enjoy learning about Marion Thompson Wright. She was the first African-American woman to obtain or earn her PhD in history. She taught at Howard for a little bit, but she was from Jersey. So it was like an amazing thing, right? Like you're like, yes. And there's actually a Marion Thompson Wright series that they do at Rutgers that my former mentor, who passed away, I think in like 2014 or 13, Dr. Clement Price, he put on a lecture series for her a lot. So yeah, her story was really, really great. Who else was, I was just all over the place, but hers was like, oh, I can do this, right? When you have doors slammed in your face as a young woman, she was one of the ones that I was just like, no doors going to be slammed in my face. I also loved Mary McLeod Bethune. She was one of my favorites. I love Mary Church Terrell, and it just so happened that they were Deltas, but it was, growing up, I didn't know, right? So I didn't know until I knew, and then I saw a thread happening where I was like, oh, all of the women that I love, they're part of this wonderful organization. So, but those would have been my favorites. And then like I said, I loved Thurgood Marshall because it was just, the stuff that he was doing, the work that he was doing to make sure that little Black kids like you and I and our parents were able to go into schools that they weren't able to do. So overturning Brown versus Board of Education was amazing to me. And then also being able to meet and speak to people who were growing up through segregation really helped out.
When you got to Virginia State, you mentioned having an awareness of the history of the university and the legacy of slavery and that's impact on the university. I watched a lot of the Morehouse onboarding process on through social media this year, and they do a heck of a job. Just like, what is it? Like rites of passage and like they really bring those young men onto campus in a very formal way that kind of creates a tradition that is long lasting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they get a sense of history as well. How do all the students at Virginia State, do they all get kind of teased with this history, or is this kind of your brain working that you were able to absorb the history?
So when we were on campus, we didn't have like an inauguration or initiation. We did have mandatory classes that we had to take as freshmen to learn the history of the school. But there was nothing that was like beautiful. I think that happened like after we left, and I was like, I want some pearls. Like they give the girls all pearls.
Yeah.
Well, the young women, they give them pearls, and the men get bow ties or something. It's an amazing thing, but I'm like, I missed the mark. Like, where's mine? As an alumni, like I'm ready to go back and get my stuff. But yeah, so it's really just we did have a mandatory class for freshmen. But it was also, you couldn't walk on campus and not be immersed in what this was. I don't think that anybody, didn't matter what your what your major was. I don't think that you walked and graduated from Virginia State not knowing something, because it was immersed in just about everything that we did.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that but then I was also like, well, let's dig a little deeper. I was waiting to find like crazy stuff on campus. Like, are we going to be able to get I think I asked one of my teachers, like, can we get an aerial shot of the school and check to see if there's remains of anybody. They're like, girl, get out of here, we ain't got that type of money. But those are the types of things I wanted to do in undergrad, and it was it was exciting to me, but maybe not so much to everybody else.
No, and I'm glad you got a passion for it, because that helps service that information out for the rest of us, because somebody got to really, really, really care to help get it to a place where we can all digest it.
Right.
But take me now, because you're about to go off on this one too. Your PhD. So what did you study for the dissertation portion of your PhD?
Okay, so I started off wanting to write about Vedet Academy, because we really don't have like a book on it. So I wanted to do like a very in-depth study. But while I was there, I got to speaking to my advisor, Dr. Elizabeth Clark Lewis, and she said, oh yeah, I remember you wanted to do that for your master's. Let's also think about maybe doing some low-hanging fruit, because at that time I was working at the National Park Service as a grants management specialist. So she said, maybe let's just do some, let's do some low-hanging fruit, and then why don't you look at maybe doing a study of the National Park Service and writing about the African Americans and the legacy of African Americans at that agency. And because I had been in and out of the Park Service since 2004, I had a lot of information already. So I kind of went down several rabbit holes writing about that. So my dissertation is on the preservation and missed opportunities of the Park Service as an agency, and what they've done and have not done since the establishment of that organization, or that agency for African Americans.
Out of all the things in U.S. history, what are some of your favorite things to study or just be informed about or read about? What really, there's a lot of stuff. Like, what really gets you going in terms of excitement?
What am I passionate about? I truly am passionate about it all. And I know that is a very broad stroke, right? But there is nothing about our history that makes me bored. I am a lifelong learner. So, like, for instance, if you said, Vedet, we need to put together some type of research project on African American business owners from the 19th century to current, and we want to do we want to look into this, looking at like the DC area. I would be fascinated the whole entire time. Like, am I a business owner? Kinda, but I would be fascinated. If you were like, we want to do something in STEM, I would be like, cool, let's get it done. I would be fascinated the whole entire time, going through those archives, being eaten alive by dust mites, all of it, because it's just that's what what really like sets a blaze to me, like being able to find the records and do the research for us and bring our slighted stories to life. That's really it. So I don't have like one area, it's like all of the areas. Like, bring it to me, I want the charge.
What do you read and consume right now that kind of keeps you current with, you know, well, there's no way to know all of history, but how do you consume new information now? What are some fun ways that you keep your awareness and education current?
For the most part, it's through like professional development journals. So like I'm usually always reading the Journal for National Council on Public History. I do some journals with Asala just to get to know what folks in the field are talking about. But I feel like that's the best thing for me because I'm able to hurry up and connect to the primary sources really quickly. I don't at this juncture have a lot of time for books like a novel.
Yeah.
But I can't, but I will go down a rabbit hole if need be. But I had to take a mental break after, getting the PhD in May. I just needed to take a break. So I was like, journals are my thing. I do a lot of not on purpose, but just because my son is on TikTok so much, I'll watch like some of the TikTok videos and then I'm like, that don't even sound right. Let me go fact check that. So I'll run down that rabbit hole. And then, I want to write like a whole expose, like, that thing that they did and they were talking about, and they said, in case you didn't know, I want to say, I want to write an article on the fact that it wasn't right, but, everybody's entitled to what they're doing and the content that they're creating. Maybe I'll just inbox them really quickly and just say, hey, add some footnotes to what you said. But other than that, I don't want to call them out for, being so woke that they need to go back to sleep and take a rest and come back to it.
Well, you mentioned your son. All this expertise certainly influences how you parent. So how do you show up as a parent differently or based on this knowledge and insight that you have as a history expert and working in the museum industry? Like, how does all of that stuff inform? What parenting decisions do you make? Do you think is based on that?
Well, everything that I do is based on, the trials and tribulations that we've overcome. The conversations that I have with my son, like if he says that he doesn't want to do something or he doesn't feel like he can do it or he has some limiting beliefs, we go right back to someone in history, an African American that he's familiar with or may not be familiar with their story. And we have a whole conversation about, well, what do you think they did? Or, do you think that was right, what they went through? And we try to just circle it back to what he's dealing with. And then a lot of times I'm sure his school is tired of me, but if I see holes, if I see holes in their curriculum, I'm like, well, you missed this. But then to make it fair, I'm always like, you missed this for, the African Americans, but then, you might want to throw this stuff on the Native Americans and Jewish folks all in here because you have those students and you want to be like more inclusive, but I'm really there for everything Black. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't just be, power to the people all the time because they're gonna be like, I don't want to hear from her anymore.
Yeah, so you got to round it out, right?
Yeah.
Well, tell me, it's basic foundational knowledge for young people. So almost, it just doesn't matter what school you're in. It kind of starts with Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and then it goes to Obama, and it's like, and then you catch Oprah Winfrey, and then it's like, what else is in the conversation? So what do you think are some foundational kind of topics for young children to just kind of have some awareness, right? They're going to build these up. So
something that we did last year that was kind of a hit is Chet, my son's name is Chet. So he was learning about the Lewis and Clark expedition. And I said, it just wasn't Lewis and Clark on that expedition and the Native American woman. There was a Black man on there. And he was like, it's not even in my book. So, it's not going to be on my test. And I said, I don't care if it's on your test. You're going to learn about York and York was the slave that was with them. They can spin it however they want. They can say that he was the Black man that helped them walk through pastures and things of that nature, but no, he was their slave. He was an enslaved man. So let's learn about Mr. York. So we went on to learn about Mr. York, and he wrote about him in his test, and I don't know if he got extra credit for it or not, but I felt like that was important for him to know that in just about every facet of American history, you are going to see an African American there, whether they were enslaved or not, whether they were on the brink of being emancipated or not, they were there. So we do a lot of looking at his curriculum to see where else we can fill in the gaps. So I know he's tired of me too, but I'm sorry, son, I cannot be the executive director of the Association of African American Museums and he doesn't know some stuff. I feel like one day he might get called to be on Jeopardy and somebody's going to say, oh, your mom did this and this, and he's going to need to know all the Black stuff. So
he has a higher level of accountability to know.
Yes.
He can walk around talking about he don't know. You
Right.
never heard this and never.
I never heard of that. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, bro.
Sure.
You know Harlem Renaissance. Don't try to pull that. We know you know.
Right.
What do you think? What if you found to be some of the best resources for kids out of all the books and cartoons and just different things that are available for kids? Like, what have been some resources that you have noticed really work?
So I've pointed just about every child to a museum, and an African American museum, and that's really not a pun because I was doing that before I was executive director of this association. But I learned really quickly that our museums have tremendous aids for students. So we were really excited to start getting, to make sure that the students and their parents knew about what African American museums had. And once COVID hit, sky's the limit. You can go to any museum and have a conversation and go to their public programming because of Zoom or whatever their platform is. But I also have to say, Matthew, and no pun, but what you're doing at Puzzle Huddle is a great resource, right? Like, check all the boxes because you are teaching children about these people whose stories may be known, may not be known. And they put together that puzzle, and I'm sure, I know on the back of the box, you talk about it. You talk about that person's story, but it's up to the parents to also dive in a little bit more and say, well, let's have a conversation about, who this person is. I know I do that with my son. And he's tired. I'm sure he's tired of book reports or puzzle reports or whatever I give him. But it's just one of those things, like really just making sure that they know, there are aids out there. There are things. A lot of times, sometimes we just go down the rabbit hole of like what's on Amazon for us. So I feel like those are the best teachers if you can get into some type of living history type of situation or go to a museum, and then obviously what you have. I think that those are the biggest things for children, just to be able to see and touch and hear.
Yeah, what might be as an adult? What's one of your favorite history movies?
Oh, I have tons of them.
As I'm asking you the question, I said mine got to be Glory, but I don't have a deep library of it internally.
I love Glory. I also love our movies that are period based on like a true story, or could be loosely based on a true story. Mm-hmm. So I love our gangster movies. So I love like the Frank White. I love the movie on, well, I do a lot of crazy documentaries, so that's my thing. I also, I think like Harlem Nights, although that is not like a history movie, right? I feel that it could have been true. So those are, you know, my favorites. But I really do love Glory. I do like 12 Years a Slave. I felt like that was really well done for our generation of folks to see themselves. I also loved oh, what's another one that I love? That is such a loaded question. I should have asked you for the questions up front.
Yeah, because it just rattle out. I love, and maybe you may sometimes find your favorite movies when you're a kid, and that just becomes your favorite movie because you were exposed to it as. But Malcolm X, I think I saw in the 6th grade, and it's that made it super memorable to me. Glory.
Glory was probably my best one. It is probably the thing I loved about Glory was just being able to see how these African American men were slaves, but then moving over to the US colored troop and fighting for something that was bigger than them, but then also to show that they, you know, wanted to also be free. So it was like a story within a story within a story. It was so complex. So that was probably, and not just because you said it, but really that's probably one of my favorite movies. Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, it's the ones that aren't necessarily, like I said, I love, what's another really great movie? I do like, what's the movie that just came out on Netflix a couple years back? Mary J. Blige was in it.
Oh Lord, my Netflix consumption has really just gone right to elementary school. So
So when I find it, I'll put it in a like an email to you so you can put it in the, you know, if you're doing this on YouTube, you can put it in
yeah, go back and capture.
like,
This was the highlight.
Yeah.
We were stumped. Just a few more things to get me out of here. So what's on display at your home? A lot of I think history experts sometimes accumulate artifacts that are kind of representative of things and places and concepts. What do you have on display at your house? I know your house isn't, you don't have a museum budget. I don't know, maybe
No.
for your house.
No, not at all. I do have an image of gosh, I have an image that was gifted to me right when I graduated from Virginia State, and it was done by an artist called Baker. And what he did was really cool. He did like the, you know, the scene of a party, but then he flipped it, so it was like a scene of a party. I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
You said last name is Baker.
Yeah, so he did a scene of a party, but then he flipped it so that it was Virginia State. And it was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. So, you know, you got to see our woo-woos in it. Those are, I don't call them cheerleaders, but, you know, you got to see our woo-woos in it. Then it was like all the Divine Nine was in this party. It was just absolutely phenomenal. It was just one of those things that I coveted while I was at the school. And I was like, when I get enough money, I'm going to buy it, but it wound up being a gift. So it was really a tremendous thing. But other than that, I don't have a lot at home because I have an 8-year-old and I have 3 dogs, and I want to make sure that everything is safe. And I, you know, but I have I have some pieces of art that are that's probably my favorite one. I'll send you the link for that. And then I have some things that I've purchased from like Hampton University. That was like some art. So I did the banjo. That was really cool. And that's just a print. But if I can get like the actual piece of
art, oh yeah.
I know I'm not going to. I don't have that type. My pockets aren't that deep.
Yeah, well, you'll get a home museum budget from somewhere. I don't know. I don't know who those grants, who you submit those grant proposals to.
Right. Yeah, they don't give to individuals, so I know I'm not going to get it. But you know,
the last thing I want to know from you is if you had an opportunity to do a TED Talk, you know, a 8 to 12-minute keynote speech in front of a worldwide audience, highlighting your expertise or your passion for a specific topic. What would you give a TED Talk about if given the opportunity?
I've actually thought about that. And it would really be the significance of African Americans in community, the history, like preserving our history, but then also like how we all connect, like not just through, our history of, majority of us, I can't say everybody because that's not everybody's story, but majority of us being descendants of slaves.
Yeah.
And then like how we are in our respective communities. We're not a monolith. So it's like, how are you in your community, in the suburbs versus the city, and then different cities, but then, how we all connect. And some of the stuff that we have is inherent to who we are as a people. And then how that shows up for us, but then also how that shows up in our museum spaces, because, our museums, all of our African-American focused museums, we're established with community first. Since the beginning of time for a AAAM museum, we are established with our communities first, and then we kind of build the museum based on what the community's needs are.
Yeah, I gotta kind of say that I feel that that's true. Walking to every museum that I know that I walk to is really good with common space and common areas. And then you get to the exhibits, but it seems like the first thing I experience is common space.
Yep. That's intentional with us. We want to make sure that the communities in which we serve see themselves in the museum. We receive so many, not African-American museums, but so many folks who are doing, mainstream museums, and they'll say the community is not coming out to our museum. What's happening? And I'm like, what do you mean? What community are you referring to? Because, there are several, and then what they really want to say is we're the Black folks. But the Black folks aren't coming to your museum because they don't see themselves there.
Right. It's got to feel like I'm a part of, like I have some equity in this place. Like I got to feel like a member or something as I walk in. Exactly. All right, Dr. Coleman-Robinson, this has been absolutely wonderful. I want to thank all of our audience, and please, if I could encourage you to like the video and subscribe to our channel, we would certainly appreciate that. Dr. Coleman-Robinson, thank you so much for your time today. And we got to do this again in about 6 months once I figure out what other prolific area of expertise you have, and I can get some more information from you.
Absolutely, whatever you need, whatever you need, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.